The Commonwealth of Massachusetts versus Lizzie A. Borden, a dramatic reading of the full trial transcript. Day 5, Friday, June 9, 1893, New Bedford, Massachusetts. Chief Justice Mason and Justices Blodgett and Dewey presided. The state was represented by the Honorable Hosea M. Knowlton and William H. Moody, Esquire. The defense was represented by the Honorable George D. Robinson, the Honorable Andrew J. Jennings, and Melvin O. Adams, Esquire. Part 4. The prosecution calls its next witness, Captain Patrick H. Doherty. Captain Doherty is sworn in and takes the witness stand. Direct examination of Captain Doherty by Mr. Moody of the prosecution.
Patrick H. Doherty.
Yes, sir.
You are a member of the police force at Fall River.
Yes, sir.
And have been for how long?
A little over 7 years.
What is your present position?
Captain.
In August of last year, what was your position?
Special officer.
Detailed for special work?
Yes, sir.
What is sometimes called inspector?
Yes, sir.
And you had no regular patrol duty to do at the time?
No, sir.
Where were you on August 4th last when you first obtained knowledge of the homicide?
In the station house.
From whom did you receive your information?
From City Marshal Hilliard.
That was the central police station, I suppose you mean?
Yes, sir.
Had you been sent for, or were you there?
I was there.
Before or after Mr. Allen had first gone?
After Mr. Allen.
Do you know the time when the marshal made any communication with you with reference to 2nd Street? Did you observe the time?
I observed the time about 7 or 8 minutes before he spoke to me.
When had you last observed the time before the talk with the marshal?
11:25.
Where were you then, and what did you look at?
I was on the corner of Bedford and 2nd Street, the City Hall clock.
And from Bedford and 2nd Streets, where did you go?
To the station.
About how far is it from the place where you saw the clock to the station?
It is not 100 feet.
Did you receive this communication as soon as you got to the station or after you had been there?
I'd been there 2 or 3 minutes.
After you had the talk with the marshal, what did you do?
I started for 92 2nd Street.
What rate of speed?
Well, I walked at a rapid gait until I got to the post office, and then I ran.
Was anyone with you?
Not at that time, no, sir.
Did you overtake anyone of any consequence in this case on the way up?
I did, yes, sir.
Whom did you overtake?
Mr. Wixon.
Deputy Sheriff?
Yes, sir.
Did you go together or did you go ahead of Mr. Wixon?
We went together after I met Mr. Wixon. We went together. I went into the yard ahead.
When you got to the yard, had a crowd collected about the house?
No, very few there when I got there.
Was there anyone out in the yard at that time?
Yes, sir.
Who was in the yard at that time?
Mr. Manning.
The reporter?
Yes, sir.
And he was at what part of the yard?
He was sitting on the steps.
Front or rear?
Rear.
You went into the house, I take it?
Yes, sir.
Tell us whom you found there after you got in.
Dr. Bowen met me at the screen door, and he said, I'm glad to see you. I said, Doctor, what's the matter?
Oh, I don't care for that, Mr. Doherty. You had some talk with Dr. Bowen, and thence you went where?
I went into the sitting room where Mr. Borden was.
At that time, had Mr. Borden's body been covered by anything?
Yes, sir.
Covered with a sheet?
With a sheet.
Did you make any observation at all, or simply look at him? Tell us what you did in respect to the body.
Dr. Bowen removed the sheet, and I looked at the body, and we had some conversation, Dr. Bowen and I.
Did you make any special observation of the blood, or any notes of the blood at that time?
I looked at it carefully, I thought.
Well, tell us what you observed with reference to it.
Well, the blood was fresh in my estimation. I think it was fresh, what I saw.
Where did you go then?
I went upstairs.
Tell us into which chamber or which room you went.
Went into the front chamber on the north side of the building where Mrs. Borden was lying.
Tell us what occurred in there.
Dr. Bowen pointed at the body, and I went over. And the body was between the dressing case and the bed, and I wanted to see the head. And there was no room for me to go between the body and the bed or the body and dressing case. And I pulled the bed one side and walked up, and I stooped down and looked at the head, moved one of the hands to look at the head, and she was cut. I told Dr. Bowen that she had been murdered too.
Had Dr. Bowen said anything to you as to the cause of her death before that?
He did.
Wait a moment, how is it competent?
I will not press it any farther. Now, did you observe anything with reference to Mrs. Borden's head?
Yes, sir. I saw it was cut and hacked, and was lying in a pool of blood. Seemed as if it had been there for some time. I saw blood spots on the pillow shams and a bunch of hair on the bed, black hair.
Well, describe the hair and tell upon what part of the bed it was.
I think it was about the middle of the bed, right on the spread.
Was that a piece of hair that appeared to have been severed, or a piece of hair that ladies sometimes use which is not their own?
It appeared to be a piece of hair which had been severed, I think.
Then how large of a piece of hair was it?
Well, it was half as large as my fist, I should think.
Did you take that piece of hair away?
I did not.
Left it right there?
I left it right there.
Have you seen it since?
I have not.
You know anything about where it went?
No, sir.
Did you observe anything else in the room?
I can't remember anything. People there?
I don't remember whether you had saw the handkerchief or not. Did you, Mr. Doherty?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you observe a sewing machine or a chair anywhere in the room?
I did not observe a sewing machine. It seems that I saw a chair. I think I did.
Now, was there any disturbance of the furniture in the room? Had anything been turned upside down? Was the chair upright?
When I went there?
Yes.
I think it was. The chair was in position.
Was there any piece of furniture that had apparently been disturbed or knocked over?
I don't think there was.
Did you observe anything of that sort?
I did not.
Will you describe more particularly in what position you saw Mrs. Borden when you first saw her?
She was lying face down, her head to the east, with her hands something like in this position.
The witness clasps his hands above his head.
What else? How was she with reference to the bed?
She was close to the bed. I think her feet projected a little below the foot of the bed.
About how far was her head from the wall?
It was, I thought, pretty close. Probably 6 or 7 inches, it seems to me now. I moved one of the hands to look at the head, and I had room to put my hands between hers and the wall.
Your hand was then outstretched?
Yes, sir. It seemed to be this way.
Do I understand that is, as you remember it now?
Yes, sir.
You have spoken of lifting the head. Did you move the body in any other way at that time?
No, sir.
Neither toward the wall or from the wall?
No, sir.
Did you turn the body over?
I did not.
After that was done, what did you do?
I went to notify the marshal.
That is, you did nothing else in the house at that time?
Not at that time, no, sir.
Did you go to the police station?
I did not. I went to the nearest telephone that I could get.
Perhaps you could tell us where that telephone was.
Mr. Gorman's or Mr. McDermott's undertaking rooms. I don't know which.
That was not far from the house?
No, sir. That was round the corner of Spring Street.
After you had telephoned, did you return to the house?
I did.
By the way, I did not ask you who was there when you first got there. I do not know that it's of any importance, but I will ask you. Who besides Dr. Bowen was in the house, I mean?
Miss Sullivan. That was all I saw in the kitchen when I first went there.
Did you see Lizzie Borden at any time when you first went?
No, sir.
Miss Russell?
No, sir.
Or Mrs. Churchill?
No, sir.
Did you go into the dining room at any time?
Not the first time, no, sir.
Coming then to the second return to the house, you returned after you had telephoned.
Yes, sir.
When you returned the second time, did you see anybody you had not seen before?
Yes, sir. Miss Borden and Mrs. Churchill.
Where did you see her?
In the kitchen, I think.
Was anyone with her?
Yes, sir.
Who?
Miss Russell and Mrs. Churchill.
Did you have any talk with her at that time?
Yes, sir.
Will you be kind enough to state what it was?
Yes, sir. I said, Miss Borden, where were you when this was done? She said, it must have been done while I was in the barn. Was there a Portuguese working for your father over the river? She said, no, sir. Mr. Johnson and Mr. Eddy work for my father. Were they here this morning? No, sir. Mr. Eddy is sick. They would not hurt my father anyhow. I asked her if she had heard any noises or outcries or screams, and she said, no, sir. I heard no particular noise. What kind of noise, Mrs. Borden? I think it was something like scraping noise.
Did you have any further talk with her?
I don't think I did.
What did you do then?
I asked the work girl then.
You had some conversation with her, which I do not care to go into.
Yes, sir.
After talking with Bridget, what did you do?
Mr. Mullally came into the room and he commented on Mr. Borden, and I told him Mrs. Borden was dead upstairs.
After talking with Mullally, you did something. What did you do?
Went up and looked at Mrs. Borden.
Did you do something? Did you go through the house?
Yes, sir.
Describe your journey through the house.
I went up the back stairs to the attic. The work girl was with us. She showed us her room and a couple of other rooms. One had a bed in it. We looked around there and we worked our way down. Every room that was opened, we looked at, and we got down into the cellar.
Did Bridget have any keys with her, do you know?
She had keys of the spare room upstairs where she slept herself. That is all.
You went into all the rooms you could get into.
Yes.
You found nothing or nobody.
We found nothing or nobody.
You went down cellar. Tell us what you did down there.
We went down cellar. We went into 2 or 3 dark places, wood or coal rooms or something. We separated. I got over near the sink and I noticed a pail and some towels.
A pass from those.
Mr. Mullally was looking at something. I came and looked over his shoulder. He had a hatchet in his hands.
Do you recall what the hatchet was?
I thought it was one with a wide blade.
Do you mean any one of these 4 instruments?
Looks something like that, large or small one. I thought the blade.
The claw-hammered hatchet.
I could not say the claw hammer.
You saw him with a hatchet?
Yes, sir.
The witness designates the claw-hammered hatchet.
Let it remain as is.
Now, I don't care about any sort of detail into going into these hatchets and axes, these 4. But did you find anything else except that hatchet that Mr. Mullally had in his hands?
No, sir.
At that time, did you find these axes or these other hatchets?
I did not see but one.
And that is the one you described as a hatchet?
Yes, sir.
Anything else occurred down at that time in the cellar?
No, sir.
After that, where did you go?
I came up the stairs and out in the yard again.
Did you look about the yard at all?
No, sir, not then.
What did you do after you went to the yard?
I went right down to the office. There was a messenger came for me from the marshal to report at his office.
Did you do so?
I did.
Did you see Miss Borden again at all? Did you go to her room?
I did.
Before you went to the marshal or after?
Before.
Before you went to the marshal?
Yes.
Do you know when she had gone up to her room?
No, sir, I do not.
Was it while you were down cellar or before you went down cellar, or don't you know?
I don't know.
But as I understand it, you first saw her and had the conversation downstairs.
I did, yes, sir, on the first floor.
Then later you saw her in her room.
Yes, sir.
Tell us what occurred in the room.
I looked around. After she concluded to open the door, I went just beyond the threshold and looked round and out again.
You spoke something about after she concluded. To describe what occurred at the door.
I went to the door, went to open it. I opened it 2 or 3 inches, and she said, 1 minute, and shut the door on me. And it was a minute, I should think, before she opened the door for me, fully a minute.
Did you go in?
I did.
Anyone with you then?
Mr. Mullally was behind me.
Who else was in the room besides Miss Borden?
I think Miss Russell. I am not positive on that point.
Did you have any talk with her at that time or not?
No, sir, I did not.
What did you do in the room at that time?
Just glanced around, that's all.
Now, if you please, return to the time you saw Miss Borden in the kitchen. Can you give any description, and if so, do it the best you can, of the dress she had on when she was downstairs in the kitchen?
I thought she had a light blue dress with a bosom in the waist or something like a bosom, and that is about all the description I can give.
Do you remember anything else about it?
I don't.
Any figure? Do you remember any figure?
I thought there was a small figure on the dress, a little spot-like.
What color was the figure?
I can't tell exactly.
If that's the best you can do, I will ask you if it was that dress.
Mr. Moody shows the witness the dark blue dress alleged by the defense to have been worn by Lizzie Borden on the morning of August 4, 1892.
No, I don't think so.
Did you return again after going to the marshal's that morning?
I came as far as the door.
Did you go in again?
I did not at that time.
Now, you made some search in the barn that afternoon, did you?
Yes, sir.
You were up there with a squad of officers who pitched the hay over.
Yes, sir.
I will ask you what the temperature was up in the loft in the barn.
It was very warm.
How was the air for breathing?
Very bad. It was stifling hot there. Very bad.
Did you notice anything about whether the barn was dusty or otherwise?
I couldn't say.
How long did you stay in the barn?
I stayed an hour.
Now, at some time, and I don't know whether it was this day or not, so I will ask it now. Did you have a talk with Bridget, or rather, did Miss Borden have a talk with Bridget about the back cellar door?
Yes, sir.
And when was that, while we're on that subject?
Friday morning, the 5th of August at 7 o'clock, about 7 o'clock.
And where were you when you had that talk? Describe it. Describe what was said.
Friday morning, Lieutenant Edson and myself went into the kitchen. Miss Borden came out from the sitting room and she said, "Maggie, are you sure the cellar door was fastened?" And Maggie made a reply, "Yes, ma'am."
Did you go to the house at all on the Thursday after you left it the first time?
Thursday evening about 9 o'clock.
You took part in some searches, did you? Saturday?
No, sir.
Did you search there at all after that, Mr. Doherty?
Never after Thursday.
That closed your connection with the matter?
With the house?
Have you ever been in that house before?
Never.
Or did you ever go about it after this morning?
Never. No, sir.
Mr. Moody completes the examination of Captain Doherty. Cross-examination of Captain Doherty by Mr. Robinson of the defense.
Will you give the time that you arrived there, Mr. Doherty, the first time?
11:35, 25 minutes to 12, I say.
And do you remember who were there at that time?
I do.
Who were they?
Dr. Bowen, Bridget Sullivan, Mr. Sawyer, Mr. Manning.
And any others outside?
A few outside.
Do you know them?
I know one.
Who was that?
Mr. Rich. I believe his name is Rich. Inside the gate in the yard.
Inside the gate, did you say?
Inside the gate in the yard. Or at the gate.
And did you see Mr. Donnelly?
I did not.
Or Mr. Stevens?
Mr. Stevens, the reporter?
Yes.
I don't want to be sure. I think there was another reporter talking to the work girl, but I can't say that I saw Mr. Stevens.
Well, Mr. Harrington?
No, sir.
Mr. Harrington, the officer?
Yes, Mr. Harrington, the officer. Mr. Medley, the officer?
No, sir.
And Mr. Rich, do you know his full name?
I do not. I was under the impression it is Augustus.
He is a resident of the city there?
Yes, sir. He's got a small place of business just below the house.
How large was that space, to the best of your judgment, between the bureau and the bed in the spare chamber?
I'd say it was 2 or 3 feet.
Well, you called it about a couple of feet before, when you told about it before?
Probably I did.
At any rate, the space was so well filled up that you could not get in on either side very well.
Exactly.
The bed on one side and the bureau on the other, and Mrs. Borden's body about filled it.
Yes, sir.
And as you describe it, the arms were up over the head?
Yes, sir.
Now you know that Dr. Bowen was in the house before that. And you know whether Dr. Bowen had been there at that time?
I don't think he was.
Did you not see him? Did you see Mr. Harrington there at any time afterwards, the officer?
I didn't see him there till 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
And did you see Mr. Medley there at any time?
I did.
When?
About 12. Just before 12, I think.
Was he in the house or out?
He was in the entry at the screen door.
You have spoken about going into Miss Lizzie's room and just glancing around. That was all you did, wasn't it?
That was all, sir.
And did you go into any other rooms above the stairs? I mean, on the second floor?
I don't think I did. They were locked.
Did you go around up the back stairs and go into Mr. Borden's room?
I did not.
Did you go up to the attic?
I did, sir.
Wasn't that the door of Mr. Borden's room unlocked for you by Bridget?
I don't remember, sir, as it was. I went into all the rooms that we found unlocked.
Did you make any examination of the dresses?
I did not.
Or look for any marks on them?
No, sir.
Or anybody's clothes?
No, sir.
You were not one of the officers, if there were any, that pulled open the door between Miss Lizzie's room and Mr. Borden's room?
No, sir.
You did not see that done?
No, sir.
That second street you were quite familiar with, I suppose?
Yes, sir.
It is a street of great thoroughfare, heavy teams and carriages and persons passing through constantly?
Yes, sir, I should say so.
Where was Mr. Sawyer when you arrived there at first?
Just inside the screen door with his hand on the latch.
And Mr. Manning?
Sitting on the steps.
Outside?
Outside.
Did you see Mr. Allen, the officer?
I did not at that time.
Did you see while you were there Ms. Russell or Mrs. Churchill fanning Miss Lizzie?
Yes, sir.
When was that?
When I spoke to Miss Lizzie.
That was during that conversation?
And Miss Russell was standing there with a paper or fan. I won't be positive which.
Are you very clear about the dress, the description of her dress?
I have a faint recollection of it, that it was a light blue dress.
But it is only a faint recollection?
Well, I'm not confident it is as dark nor as full of blue as that.
You think not?
As this dress that has been produced.
Yes, sir.
The one there on the table. And last August you were somewhat doubtful about it, were you not? Whether it was a light blue or a dark blue?
I don't think it was.
You don't remember about that? You didn't see her with the pink wrapper on later, did you?
No, sir, I didn't. I didn't see her but once after that, and that was in the evening.
Then you went there on Friday also, I think you said?
I was there all the morning from 1 o'clock Friday morning till 8:30 in the yard.
Do you know what dress she had on that morning?
I thought she had the same one on.
Which one?
The light blue.
You think that is so, do you?
I think so. I can't say so positively.
You didn't really notice much about it, did you?
No, sir, not a great deal.
What?
Not any more than I did the first time, a very short interview there.
You went down cellar and saw what of these tools?
I saw Mr. Mullally with the short hatchet in his hand.
Did you see anything wrong about the hatchet in any way?
I did not. Hardly look at it. I spoke to him about it.
You think it is the one with the claw head?
I think it is.
Did you see this at any time?
Mr. Robinson shows the handleless hatchet.
No, sir.
You don't know anything about that?
I do not.
Were you there in the cellar with Mr. Fleet?
No, sir.
And you don't know anything about that?
I do not.
When did you first see it?
I think this is the first I see of that, as far as I know. I don't know as I ever saw it before today.
Did you go to the house to bring away the hatchets and the axes?
No, sir. I didn't go there for that purpose.
Did you bring them away?
No, sir.
Do you know who did?
I do. Lieutenant Edson, Francis L. Edson.
Do you know what he brought?
I do.
And what?
Brought 2 axes and 2 hatchets.
And he did not bring this, the hatchet without the handle?
I don't think he did. He showed me what he had. He called my attention to what he had.
And you didn't see any such thing as that there?
No, sir.
What day was it he showed you what he had?
Friday morning, 6 o'clock.
Was that the time he brought them away?
Shortly after 6, before 6:30 in the morning. Between 6 and 6:30 at the time he brought them away.
He showed them to you, as I understand, at the station?
No, sir. Coming out. I was at the front gate, stationed at the front gate.
The front gate of the station?
The residence, 92 2nd Street.
You were up there quite early Friday morning?
I went there at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock at night?
Yes, sir.
Were there persons around the house that night?
There were.
How many inside the yard?
Only the officers inside.
There were officers there on duty?
There were 4 of us, I think.
All the time?
All the time.
Those were inside the yard, and how many on the outside?
I think there was 1 patrolling up and down in front of the house, and there were 4 of us inside of the premise.
You stayed there all night?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember what dress Bridget had on that morning?
She had a calico dress, I think. I don't remember fully.
Well, what was its color?
I can't say. It was kind of a brown calico dress.
A brown, dark dress?
Yes, sir.
That is your recollection of it?
That is my recollection of it.
Mr. Robinson completes the cross-examination of Captain Patrick H. Doherty. Captain Doherty is excused. The Lizzie Borden trial Day 5 featured Christine Daniels as George Robinson, Keith Morrison as William H. Moody, Ian Morrison as Patrick Doherty. I'm your Day 5 announcer, Ron Newcombe, and from everyone at Lions Den Audio, stay healthy, stay happy, and stay safe.